From ancient gods creating islands with jeweled spears to modern robots serving sushi, Japan's 4,000-year history is the most incredible transformation story ever told. A nation that has died and been reborn multiple times, each time emerging stronger and stranger. Today, we're covering the entire history of Japan in 14 minutes. Legendary emperors, unstoppable samurai, 250 years of isolation, nuclear devastation, and economic miracles. This is the complete story of the land of the rising sun. Japanese mythology claims the islands were created when gods Izanagi and Izanami stirred the ocean with a jeweled spear. Drops became the Japanese archipelago. Their descendants became emperors, making Japan's imperial line allegedly 2,680 years old, the world's longest continuous monarchy. Real history begins with the Jomon people, 14,000 BCE. These hunter-gatherers created sophisticated pottery with cord patterns and lived in permanent settlements for over 10,000 years, while the rest of the world discovered agriculture. Around 300 BCE, the Yayoi people arrived bringing rice cultivation, bronze tools, and social hierarchy. Rice transformed Japan from egalitarian hunter-gatherers to stratified farming communities. The Yayoi period introduced warfare, social classes, and organized kingdoms. By 300 CE, the Yamato clan dominated central Japan, building massive tomb mounds called kofun, some larger than Egyptian pyramids. These contained weapons, mirrors, and clay figures called haniwa, showing a sophisticated society obsessed with the afterlife. Prince Shotoku revolutionized Japan in 593 CE, creating the first constitution and sending envoys to Tang China. Buddhism merged with native Shinto, creating Japan's unique religious synthesis. Japan's first permanent capital was established at Nara in 710, then moved to Heian-kyo, Kyoto, in 794. The Heian period, 794 to 1185, was Japan's cultural golden age. The Fujiwara clan controlled emperors through strategic marriages while court culture reached unprecedented refinement. This era produced humanity's first novels. Lady Murasaki Shikibu wrote The Tale of Genji, around 1000 CE, a 1,000-page psychological masterpiece still studied today. Court ladies developed hiragana writing, allowing Japanese to express their own language beyond Chinese characters. Heian aristocrats were obsessed with aesthetic perfection, the correct silk robe combinations, perfect calligraphy, elegant poetry competitions. They created gagaku court music, elaborate incense ceremonies, and sophisticated garden design. But while nobles perfected flower arrangement, real power shifted to provincial warrior families who cared more about sharp swords than poetry. Two military clans grew powerful enough to challenge the Fujiwara, the Taira and Minamoto. Their rivalry exploded into the Genpei War, 1180 to 1185, ending Heian elegance forever. The war climaxed at the naval battle of Dan no Ura. The Minamoto annihilated the Taira fleet. Rather than surrender, surviving Taira nobles threw themselves into the sea. Legend claims their spirits became crabs with human faces. Minamoto no Yoritomo became Japan's first shogun in 1192, establishing dual government. The emperor remained in Kyoto as spiritual figurehead, while the shogun held real power from Kamakura. Samurai developed Bushido, way of the warrior, emphasizing loyalty, honor, courage, and ritual suicide rather than dishonor. They carried two swords as symbols of their deadly skill and social status. Zen Buddhism perfectly matched samurai mentality. Its emphasis on discipline and meditation influenced swordsmanship, tea ceremony, and garden design. Japan's greatest test came with Mongol invasions in 1274 and 1281. Kublai Khan demanded submission. When refused, he launched massive naval invasions. The first brought 28,000 troops, the second 150,000, the largest naval force in history, until D-Day. Both invasions were destroyed by typhoons, Japanese called kamikaze, divine wind. Japan had achieved the impossible, successfully resisting Mongol conquest. This convinced Japanese their islands were divinely protected, fostering a sense of unique destiny lasting centuries. The Kamakura shogunate fell in 1333, replaced by the weaker Ashikaga shogunate. Their inability to control the country led to the Sengoku Jidai, Age of Warring States, 1467 to 1615. For 150 years, Japan was 60-plus independent kingdoms ruled by daimyo in constant warfare. Paradoxically, competition forced innovation. Daimyo became efficient administrators, building infrastructure and encouraging trade. Portuguese traders arrived in 1543, bringing firearms. Japanese craftsmen quickly reverse-engineered arquebuses. Within 50 years, Japan had more guns than any European country. Portuguese missionaries followed in 1549. Christianity spread rapidly. At its peak, 750,000 Japanese were Christian. Some daimyo converted for religious reasons, others for European trade access. Three legendary figures emerged to reunify Japan: Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Nobunaga was ruthlessly innovative, using firearms en masse and destroying Buddhist monasteries opposing him. Enemies called him the Demon King. When assassinated in 1582, his general Hideyoshi took control. Hideyoshi, born a peasant, rose through pure ability, remarkable in feudal society. He completed unification and launched invasions of Korea, 1592 to 1598, that ultimately failed but demonstrated Japan's military ambitions. When Hideyoshi died, Tokugawa Ieyasu seized power after victory at Sekigahara, 1600, beginning 268 years of peace. Ieyasu established his capital at Edo, Tokyo, and created absolute control through the Sankin Kotai system. Daimyo spent alternate years in Edo with families as hostages. This prevented rebellion while creating national infrastructure. Most dramatically, Japan adopted sakoku, national isolation. By the 1630s, foreign travel was banned, foreigners expelled except a tiny Dutch trading post, and Christianity prohibited under penalty of death. Japan voluntarily cut itself off from the world for over 200 years. Why isolation? The Tokugawa feared foreign influence threatened their control. They'd observed European colonization elsewhere and chose complete self-sufficiency over potential conquest. Isolation had unexpected benefits. Without external threats, military spending plummeted. Agriculture improved, feeding a population growing from 12 million to 33 million. Edo became the world's largest city with over 1 million inhabitants. Peace produced extraordinary cultural flowering. The merchant class, officially despised but increasingly wealthy, patronized new art forms. Kabuki theater developed dramatic poses and elaborate costumes. The floating world culture celebrated transient beauty in pleasure quarters. Ukiyo-e woodblock prints by Hokusai and Hiroshige created globally iconic images like the Great Wave off Kanagawa. Basho elevated haiku to high art. The culture we consider traditionally Japanese largely developed during this period. Education spread rapidly. By 1850, Japan had higher literacy than most European countries, but isolation couldn't last. The Western world was industrializing and developing imperial ambitions. On July 8, 1853, American Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships steamed into Edo Bay, ending isolation with gunboat diplomacy. 4 steam-powered warships made Japan's technological inferiority terrifyingly obvious. The Tokugawa shogunate, faced with superior technology, signed the Treaty of Kanagawa, opening ports to American trade. This humiliation triggered political crisis. Young samurai rallied around Sono Joy: revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. But these weren't traditionalists. They understood Japan needed modernization or faced colonization. In 1868, they launched the Meiji Restoration, ostensibly returning power to 15-year-old Emperor Meiji, but actually establishing progressive government determined to transform Japan. The Meiji government adopted Fukoku Kyohei, rich country, strong military, and revolutionized everything simultaneously. They abolished feudalism overnight. Samurai lost sword-carrying rights, stipends, and legal privileges. The rigid class system was replaced with legal equality. When samurai rebelled, government forces crushed them with conscript armies using modern weapons. The Satsuma Rebellion, 1877, was the last gasp of the warrior class. Massive modernization followed. They hired thousands of foreign experts to teach everything from military tactics to industrial processes. Compulsory education was established in 1872. Railways connected major cities. Modern industries emerged. Most remarkably, they created world-class military forces trained by German and British advisors. Results were spectacular. By 1900, Japan had higher literacy than most European nations and military forces that would soon shock the world. By 1894, just 40 years after Perry's arrival, Japan challenged mighty China in the First Sino-Japanese War. Japan's crushing victory stunned the world. Modern Japanese forces destroyed Chinese armies with ease. The Treaty of Shimonoseki gave Japan Taiwan, Korean independence from China, and massive reparations. But European powers forced Japan to return some gains in the Triple Intervention, convincing Japanese leaders that only military strength guaranteed international respect. The Russo-Japanese War, 1904 to 1905, was even more significant. When Russia expanded into Manchuria and Korea, Japan launched surprise attacks on Russian forces. The war climaxed at the Battle of Tsushima, where Admiral Togo completely destroyed the Russian Baltic Fleet, the first time an Asian power had defeated a European empire in modern warfare. Japan gained control of southern Manchuria and recognition as a great power. In 1910, Japan annexed Korea, beginning 35 years of often brutal colonial rule, attempting to erase Korean culture. During World War I, Japan fought with the Allies, easily capturing German colonies while profiting enormously from wartime trade. The 1920s promised Japanese democracy with universal male suffrage and League of Nations membership. But the Great Depression devastated Japan's export economy. Military leaders blamed democracy for Japan's problems. Ultra-nationalist groups assassinated moderate politicians in the government by assassination period. In 1931, army officers staged the Manchurian Incident, conquering Manchuria and establishing the puppet state Manchukuo. Japan left the League of Nations and moved closer to Nazi Germany. The Second Sino-Japanese War began in 1937 with the Marco Polo Bridge incident. Japanese forces captured Beijing and Shanghai but became bogged down in guerrilla warfare. The rape of Nanking saw Japanese troops massacre hundreds of thousands of Chinese civilians. By 1941, America imposed severe economic sanctions. Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, December 7, 1941, was a desperate gamble to break the stranglehold. Admiral Yamamoto warned, "I fear we have awakened a sleeping giant." Japan's early successes were spectacular, conquering the Philippines, Dutch East Indies, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Burma within months. But the tide turned at Midway, June 1942, where Japan lost 4 aircraft carriers and irreplaceable pilots. What followed was grinding attrition. Japan couldn't win. American industrial supremacy produced weapons faster than Japan could destroy them. B-29 bombers systematically destroyed Japanese cities. The March 9–10, 1945 firebombing of Tokyo killed 100,000 people in one night. Japanese resistance grew desperate. Kamikaze attacks saw pilots deliberately crash into American ships. Over 3,800 kamikaze sorties were launched, but they couldn't change the outcome. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima, August 6, and Nagasaki, August 9, killed over 200,000 people. The Soviet invasion of Manchuria destroyed Japan's largest remaining army. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito announced surrender, calling the war situation not necessarily to Japan's advantage. Typical Japanese understatement. Japan lay in absolute ruins. Japan in 1945 was apocalyptic. Cities were ash, the economy collapsed, 7 million were homeless, and millions faced starvation. Many predicted Japan would never recover. They were spectacularly wrong. American occupation under General MacArthur transformed Japan more than the Meiji Restoration. The 1947 Constitution established democratic government, guaranteed human rights, and included Article 9, the Peace Clause renouncing war forever. Women gained voting rights and legal equality. Land reform created millions of small farmers. War crimes trials held leaders accountable. The Zaibatsu industrial conglomerates were broken up. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, provided crucial economic stimulus. American military spending jump-started recovery. Japan became America's key Asian ally, focusing on economic growth rather than military power. What followed was the Japanese economic miracle, the fastest sustained growth in world history. From 1955 to 1973, Japan's economy grew 10% annually. Manufacturing output increased 15-fold. Japanese companies revolutionized global industry. Toyota pioneered just-in-time manufacturing. Sony created markets for transistors, televisions, and Walkmans. Honda proved Japanese cars could compete globally. Nintendo made video games a worldwide phenomenon. Made in Japan transformed from meaning cheap imitations to representing the world's highest quality. By the 1980s, Japan seemed unstoppable. Japanese companies bought iconic American properties. Books claimed Japan would surpass America economically. But success bred speculation. Asset prices reached insane levels. Tokyo's Imperial Palace was theoretically worth more than all California real estate. When the bubble burst in 1991, stock prices collapsed 75%. The 1990s became Japan's lost decades as economic stagnation persisted. Deflation, bad loans, and demographic decline created low growth cycles. But while Japan's economy stagnated, its cultural influence exploded. Anime and manga conquered global markets. Studio Ghibli films won international acclaim. J-pop, Japanese fashion, and kawaii culture became worldwide phenomena. Cool Japan generated soft power rivaling Hollywood. Japanese cuisine achieved unprecedented international status. Sushi restaurants opened globally. Japanese whiskey won awards. The concept of umami became the 5th recognized taste. Today's Japan faces unique challenges. The world's most rapidly aging society with 28% over 65. Birth rates fell to 1.3 children per woman, far below replacement. Regional security concerns grow as China rises and North Korea develops nuclear weapons. These challenges force gradual change. Japan slowly increases defense spending and reinterprets Article 9 for collective self-defense. Immigration increases to address labor shortages, but Japan's greatest strength remains